John the Fixer Malone and Sarah Collins never imagined their lives would become entwined in a deadly game beneath Liverpool's docks. One was a dock worker caught between loyalty and fear, the other an undercover officer chasing shadows in a city where trust was a rare commodity. Their stories reveal how Liverpool transformed from a proud port city into the heart of a global drug trafficking empire, where every shipment carried secrets and every move could be their last. Liverpool's story as a bustling port city dates back centuries. Its docks have always been vital for trade, connecting Britain to the rest of the world. But as the years passed, something darker began to take shape beneath the surface of this busy hub. What once was a place of hope and opportunity slowly became a gateway for illegal activities, especially drug smuggling. The city's deep-water docks, designed to handle massive shipments of goods, offered a perfect cover for traffickers. Containers carrying legitimate products could easily hide illicit drugs, making it difficult for authorities to detect the smuggling at first. In the late 20th century, as global drug markets expanded, Liverpool's location made it increasingly attractive to smugglers. Positioned on the west coast of England, with direct access to the Atlantic Ocean, it was ideally placed to receive shipments from South America, one of the world's largest drug-producing regions. Unlike other ports where law enforcement was tighter, Liverpool's sprawling docks and busy environment created blind spots that criminals quickly learned to exploit. Small, unnoticed shipments began slipping through customs. At first, these were isolated incidents, briefcases filled with cocaine or small packages of heroin hidden inside cargo. But as smugglers saw the success of these operations, the volume steadily increased. The local economy, struggling with job losses and social challenges, unintentionally provided a workforce for the emerging criminal enterprises. Dock workers and drivers, often paid low wages, became vulnerable to offers of extra cash to look the other way or assist with moving illegal shipments. Over time, the relationship between the docks and the drug trade grew stronger. What had started as a few scattered cases evolved into an organized system involving multiple players, criminal gangs, corrupt officials and international traffickers working in concert. This hidden world thrived in the shadows, unknown to most residents. Liverpool's port, once a symbol of hope and progress, was quietly transforming into a major entry point for drugs destined for markets across Europe. The consequences of this shift would be profound, setting the stage for years of violence, corruption and tragedy that would shake the city to its core. By the late 1990s, the drug smuggling operations in Liverpool had grown far beyond small, isolated shipments. A new generation of criminals had risen, transforming the city's underworld into a highly organized and ruthless network. These were not the traditional local gangs that Liverpool had once known. Instead, these were well-connected, sophisticated groups with ties that stretched far beyond the city's boundaries. The docks had become a battlefield for control, and whoever ruled the port controlled a vital link in the global drug trade. The new cartels were different in their methods and scope. They operated like businesses, with clear hierarchies and strict rules. Their leaders were strategic and patient, carefully coordinating shipments and managing risks. They formed alliances with international crime syndicates, securing drug supplies from places like Colombia, Mexico, and Afghanistan. Liverpool's port was no longer just a point of entry. It was a major distribution hub that funneled millions of pounds worth of cocaine, heroin, and other narcotics into Europe. These criminal organizations used violence and intimidation to protect their interests. Rival gangs fought fiercely to gain or maintain control of the docks, leading to brutal clashes that often spilled out into the streets. Turf wars erupted, with shootings and bombings becoming alarmingly common. The violence wasn't just about territory, it was about power and profit. Each shipment that passed through Liverpool was worth millions, and the stakes were high. At the same time, the cartels employed sophisticated tactics to avoid detection. They used fake documentation, hidden compartments inside containers, and corrupt insiders to slip drugs past customs checks. The traffickers constantly adapted, changing routes and methods whenever law enforcement caught on. This cat-and-mouse game made it nearly impossible for authorities to dismantle the operation completely. Meanwhile, the city itself was caught in the middle. Some neighborhoods became hotbeds for drug-related crime and addiction. The wealth generated by the cartels was rarely seen in the community. Instead, many locals faced poverty, fear, and violence. As the cartels grew bolder, it became clear that Liverpool's reputation was shifting. From a proud port city with a rich history, it was becoming known internationally as a hub for drug trafficking and criminal enterprise. Most people saw the port of Liverpool as just a busy place where goods came and went, never realizing the complex web of secret routes hidden beneath the surface. The drug traffickers knew exactly how to exploit every weakness in the system. They carefully studied the port's operations, looking for gaps where their shipments could pass unnoticed. What seemed like ordinary containers were often cleverly disguised to carry vast quantities of drugs, hidden in ways so inventive that even experienced inspectors were fooled. The traffickers didn't rely on just one route or method. Instead, they created a tangled network of smuggling pathways that stretched across continents. Cocaine shipments arrived from South America, hidden inside shipments of fruits, vegetables, or machinery parts. Heroin came from Asia, concealed in containers of textiles or electronics. Synthetic drugs, harder to detect and often manufactured in Europe itself, moved through smaller, less monitored routes. Each shipment took a different path, confusing customs officials and law enforcement. One of the traffickers' most effective strategies was using what they called mules, containers that looked normal but had secret compartments, or false bottoms. These hidden spaces were often sealed so tightly that even scanners struggled to reveal what lay beneath. At times they used corrupt workers who helped load the containers in ways that made detection nearly impossible. The drugs were spread out in small amounts across many shipments, making it less likely for any one container to raise suspicion. The smugglers also took advantage of Liverpool's sheer size and busy activity. With hundreds of ships arriving each week, customs officers couldn't inspect every container thoroughly. They had to rely on risk profiling and random checks. But traffickers studied these patterns and timed their shipments accordingly. Some drugs passed through when inspections were light, such as during shift changes or holidays. This invisible network of routes was constantly evolving. When authorities found one method, the traffickers switched to another, using different ports, routes, or transport modes. Sometimes drugs were moved from ships to trucks, trains, or even small planes, all coordinated to ensure the cargo reached dealers waiting in cities across Europe. The hidden routes through Liverpool's port were the arteries of a vast and dangerous trade, allowing illegal drugs to flow quietly but powerfully into the world's markets. As the drug trade in Liverpool grew bigger and more profitable, it became impossible to keep it hidden without inside help. Corruption quietly spread through the city's institutions like a virus, infecting those who were supposed to protect the port and its people. Customs officers, dock workers, and even some members of the local police force found themselves caught between the demands of criminals and the pressures of their jobs. Some were tempted by the large sums of money offered, while others were threatened or blackmailed into cooperating. Bribes became a common tool used by traffickers to ensure their shipments passed without inspection. Money changed hands in secret meetings, often disguised as gifts or favors. For some workers struggling to make ends meet, these payments were too good to refuse. Even a small bribe could mean the difference between poverty and comfort. Over time, this created an environment where illegal activities could thrive openly, shielded by those inside the system who turned a blind eye. In some cases, corruption went deeper than just ignoring suspicious containers. Certain officials actively helped organize shipments, providing information about when inspections would be light or which containers to avoid. This insider knowledge was invaluable to the traffickers, allowing them to operate with near impunity. The port, once a symbol of legitimate commerce, had become a place where loyalty was bought and sold. Efforts to uncover this corruption faced serious obstacles. Investigations were often stalled or sabotaged by leaks from within. Whistleblowers who tried to expose wrongdoing faced intimidation, threats, or worse. The line between law enforcement and criminality blurred, creating a dangerous and unstable environment. As a result, Many honest officers found themselves isolated or powerless, unable to challenge the powerful networks of corruption that had taken root. This corruption didn't just affect those working at the docks, it had a ripple effect throughout Liverpool. Communities suffered as the drug trade fueled violence, addiction, and poverty. The trust between the public and authorities eroded, making it even harder to fight back. In this way, corruption became one of the most effective weapons the drug cartels had, allowing them to maintain control and expand their empire beneath the surface of the city. Amid the growing darkness of Liverpool's drug trade, a glimmer of hope appeared when a dock worker, tired of the violence and corruption around him, decided to take a huge risk. This individual, once deeply involved in the daily workings of the port, began secretly gathering evidence. He recorded conversations, took photos of suspicious containers, and documented the movements of key players within the smuggling network. What he uncovered was far more extensive and dangerous than anyone had imagined. His evidence revealed the complexity and scale of the operations. The shipments were larger, more frequent, and better protected than law enforcement had realized. Corrupt officials were not just turning a blind eye, they were active participants, coordinating with traffickers to ensure safe passage for the drugs. The network wasn't just local but connected to powerful international crime syndicates, making Liverpool a crucial hub in the global drug trade. Every shipment that arrived brought with it the potential for violence and chaos in the streets. The informant's revelations gave police new leads and forced authorities to reconsider their approach. With solid proof in hand, they could finally begin targeting some of the key figures responsible for the smuggling. But this progress came with a cost. Those who controlled the drug trade quickly caught wind of the threat. The city's criminal underworld, known for its ruthless enforcement, responded with chilling violence. Those who cooperated with law enforcement or even seemed suspicious were marked for retaliation. The dock worker himself became a target. Moving in the shadows, he had to stay one step ahead of those hunting him, knowing that a single mistake could cost him his life. The risk he took exposed not only the traffickers but also the dangerous extent of the corruption and the lengths to which criminals would go to protect their empire. This chapter of Liverpool's underworld marked a turning point. The informant's brave actions forced the criminal networks into the open, triggering a chain reaction of investigations, arrests, and violent reprisals. But the fight was far from over, and the true cost of stepping into the light would soon become clear. When law enforcement finally launched a major crackdown on Liverpool's drug trade, it was expected to be a decisive blow against the criminal networks. However, instead of bringing order, the operation ignited a violent storm that engulfed the city. The traffickers, desperate to protect their territory and profits, responded with brutal force. What followed was a deadly turf war that turned once quiet neighborhoods into dangerous battlegrounds. Rival gangs, each vying for control of the lucrative port routes, clashed openly on the streets. Shootings, bombings, and violent confrontations became daily headlines, shocking residents who had long been aware of the drug problem but were unprepared for this level of violence. Innocent bystanders were caught in the crossfire, and fear gripped communities. The scale of the conflict revealed just how deeply the drug trade had embedded itself in Liverpool's social fabric. This crackdown also exposed fractures within the criminal world. Some factions chose to fight for dominance, while others attempted to make secret deals with law enforcement to avoid destruction. Trust between gangs vanished, and alliances dissolved overnight. The port, once a symbol of commerce and connection, had become a war zone where power shifted violently and unpredictably. Law enforcement faced enormous challenges. While they aimed to dismantle the networks, their presence sometimes escalated the violence, as traffickers grew more desperate and reckless. The crackdown also highlighted the limits of policing in a city where corruption and fear had long weakened the justice system. Officers struggled to gather evidence or protect witnesses willing to come forward, and some found themselves targeted by those they sought to arrest. For many in Liverpool, the crackdown was a double-edged sword. It disrupted the drug trade but also brought unprecedented violence and instability. Families were torn apart, and entire neighborhoods suffered as the battle for control raged on. The crackdown marked a turning point, revealing the true cost of Liverpool's transformation into a global drug trafficking hub and setting the stage for even darker times ahead. Liverpool's role as a major drug trafficking hub didn't just affect the city itself, it sent shockwaves across the globe. As authorities made seizures in other European ports, they found that many of the intercepted shipments had passed through Liverpool first. This discovery exposed how deeply connected Liverpool's underworld was to an international network, linking producers, smugglers, and dealers across continents, countries from Spain to the Netherlands, and even as far as Scandinavia, began noticing an increase in drugs tied to shipments originating in Liverpool. Police forces and customs agencies had to collaborate like never before, sharing intelligence and coordinating operations to track the flow of narcotics. The European Union's law enforcement bodies worked to piece together the routes and players involved, revealing a sprawling criminal web that was far more complex than anyone had imagined. This global fallout put Liverpool's drug trade under intense scrutiny. Governments pressured British authorities to act swiftly and decisively. Yet, traffickers proved remarkably adaptable. When one route was closed or a shipment seized, they quickly shifted to alternatives. New smuggling methods emerged, including the use of smaller ports nearby, underground tunnels, and even drones to move drugs discreetly. The ever-changing tactics made it clear that this was not a problem that could be solved overnight. The international connections also meant that violence and corruption linked to the trade were not confined to Liverpool. Similar patterns of intimidation, bribery, and bloodshed appeared in cities connected by these routes. The drug money fueled criminal activities worldwide, from street gangs in European capitals to cartel violence in South America. Liverpool's port had become one crucial node in a global machine of crime and exploitation. For local authorities, the challenge grew as they had to balance aggressive enforcement with protecting communities. International cooperation brought new resources and information, but also new complications, as different countries had varying laws and priorities. Liverpool's transformation into a global trafficking hub was a reminder that in the fight against drug smuggling, no city or country could act alone. The stakes were high, and the battle was far from over. Behind the headlines of seizures, arrests, and violent clashes, there were countless hidden stories that showed the true cost of Liverpool's rise as a drug trafficking hub. The people most affected were often those with no connection to the criminals. Families torn apart, children growing up in fear, and individuals trapped in cycles of addiction and poverty. These human faces revealed the harsh reality beneath the crime statistics. Many neighborhoods around the port, once proud and vibrant communities, suffered as drugs flooded the streets. Addiction rates soared, and with them came increased crime, homelessness, and parents watched helplessly as their children fell under the influence of drugs, or became involved in dangerous gangs just to survive. Schools struggled to cope with students distracted by trauma and addiction, and social services were overwhelmed. The violence that erupted during the battles for control left scars that went beyond physical injuries. People lived in fear of being caught in the crossfire or becoming targets themselves. Trust between neighbors faded, replaced by suspicion and silence. Some residents chose to leave the city altogether, unable to bear the ongoing unrest. Others stayed, determined to fight for a better future despite the challenges. Even those involved in the trade often became victims. Low-level workers and runners risked their lives daily for small pay, knowing they were expendable if things went wrong. The lure of quick money often led to tragic consequences, including arrests, brutal retaliation, or death. The criminal leaders, while wealthy and powerful, rarely faced the same dangers firsthand. This hidden toll made it clear that the drug trade was not just a crime problem but a deep social crisis. It eroded the fabric of communities and left long-lasting damage that would take years to repair. Understanding these human stories was essential to grasping the full impact of Liverpool's underworld. The city's struggle was not only against traffickers but also against the heartbreak and loss suffered by ordinary people caught in the shadow of the drug trade. As law enforcement and communities fought to regain control, the landscape of Liverpool's drug underworld began to shift dramatically. Old power structures crumbled, and new players emerged from the shadows, eager to claim their place in the lucrative but dangerous trade. These newcomers were often younger, more tech-savvy, and willing to use modern tools to outsmart both rivals and the police. The game had changed, and so had the stakes. Technology became a critical weapon in the ongoing battle for control. Traffickers began using encrypted messaging apps to communicate securely, making it nearly impossible for authorities to intercept their plans. They employed drones to move small but valuable packages over city boundaries, bypassing traditional checkpoints and surveillance. Social media platforms were used not just to recruit new members but also to coordinate activities and spread misinformation, confusing law enforcement efforts. At the same time, the line between criminals and those meant to uphold the law grew increasingly blurred. Some corrupt officials continued to aid traffickers, but now they faced new pressures as internal investigations intensified. Others found themselves caught in a complicated web of loyalties and fear, unsure who to trust. The rise of cybercrime alongside drug trafficking added another layer of complexity, creating partnerships between different types of criminals. The new generation of traffickers was more ruthless and unpredictable. Unlike the old cartels, they showed little hesitation in using extreme violence to eliminate rivals or silence witnesses. The violence spread beyond the docks, reaching deeper into neighborhoods and affecting more innocent lives. The drug trade's expansion into synthetic drugs and designer substances further complicated efforts to control it, as these new substances were harder to detect and often more harmful. Despite increased policing and technological advances in crime fighting, the underworld adapted quickly. The balance of power in Liverpool's drug scene remained unstable, shifting constantly between factions. This ongoing struggle made it clear that the fight against drug trafficking was far from over. It had evolved into a high-tech, high-stakes war, with new dangers lurking behind every corner and the future uncertain for a city still wrestling with its dark legacy. Today, Liverpool continues to live with the legacy of its transformation into a global drug trafficking hub. While the worst of the violence has subsided, the deep roots of the drug trade remain embedded in the city's fabric. Law enforcement has made significant progress in shutting down major criminal organizations, arresting key figures, and improving security at the docks. Modern technology, stricter regulations, and international cooperation have made smuggling more difficult than before. However, the threat has not disappeared. It has changed shape. The port still serves as a gateway, but now it is guarded more closely. Advanced scanning equipment, intelligence sharing between countries, and better trained officers help intercept illegal shipments before they reach the streets. Corruption, while reduced, still exists in pockets, reminding the city of past vulnerabilities. Criminals continue to search for new ways to exploit weaknesses, pushing authorities to remain vigilant and adaptable. Beyond the docks, Liverpool faces the ongoing challenge of dealing with the social damage left behind. Communities hit hardest by the drug trade still struggle with addiction, poverty and crime. Recovery programs, education initiatives, and community support have made inroads, but rebuilding trust and opportunity takes time. The scars from years of violence and fear are not easily erased, and for many, the memories remain vivid. The city's experience serves as a cautionary tale about how economic hardship, corruption, and global crime can combine create a dangerous environment. Liverpool's story is a reminder that no place is immune to the forces of illegal trade, especially when strategic opportunities exist. It also highlights the importance of resilience, how law enforcement, communities and individuals have fought back against seemingly overwhelming odds. As Liverpool moves forward, the lessons learned continue to shape